Thank you all. Honored to have time with you all again. It's been really fascinating to watch all of you journeying together in a lot of silence, which is just such a valuable commodity for a world that doesn't know that power anymore. And so just honoring the silence that we've shared together and the wisdoms that have also been shared and the insights are extraordinary. I was honored to just experience with you last night that rebirthing experience of realizing you come from self. And it really is a reorientation for life once you really sink into that reality, because the stories that we live by are what disease us. When we start to really comprehend that the body is disappearing and reappearing every millionth of a second at the atomic level, and at the cellular level, it's rebirthing every cell in your body constantly. Your entire gut lining is brand new every 3 days, all of your life. Hundreds of billions of cells replace themselves completely. Every single cell in your body is completely new every 7 years, your entire life. And so how do we carry disease forward? Like, how is it possible that disease can occur if you're constantly rebirthing? And the only answer to that seems to be the original information keeps getting disrupted. And so you're returning to a more and more disrupted version of yourself from a very early age. And we start to see it in the way in which the body heals or fails to heal. And maybe you've had kids and you've seen your 4-year-old fall down on the playground, tear up their knee, and 2 weeks later there's no evidence that was ever there. There's no scar tissue, there's normal skin. It's 100% healed. If that kid falls down at 10 and there's scar, that same injury in a 95-year-old can end up in a hospital with, rapid infections and death. And so why is the body failing to return to the original design? And the answer seems to be in our emotions. Our emotions are an artifact of the mind. And when we process a feeling into an emotion, we disrupt the field. We disrupt the original energy information, the information stream. And so Chinese medicine for 9,000 years has understood that specific emotions not being able to be moved through the body because they're unnatural to biology. Feelings are normal, emotions are not. So emotions cannot process through the body, so they store in specific organ systems. So the Chinese were able to map out this emotion leads to lung cancer in this position of the left lung lower lobe. This condition of pancreatic cancer results from this emotion in this age at that organ system. And so it's pinpoint accurate, and across people, it's across genetics. It doesn't have to do with your genetics, it has to do with the emotion. And so to understand the disease of life as an emotional construct is super helpful. And so there's a lot of us that have heard our doctors tell us that it's all in your head. And they're actually right in the sense that the head was what converted a feeling to an emotion and disrupted your capacity to regenerate to the original design. And so the way that I think about emotions now is as the high fructose corn syrup of feelings. You've heard the apple a day keeps the doctor away. Apples are almost entirely fructose, and they have this incredible health impact on biology. Anti-inflammatory, they have an incredible generative effect on the kidneys. They're phenomenal for you, unless they're soaked in chemicals and all the other jazz. But a good apple is phenomenal, it's all fructose. But if you take the fructose out of an apple or out of what we usually do is out of corn because it's cheaper, take that fructose and then we create the mirror image. It's exactly the same molecules, but it's flipped chemically, and so it becomes the mirror image of its original self. And the body can't figure out what it is. It does not respond as a carbohydrate. Fructose is a sugar, it's pure sugar. It's the most simple sugar in the body. It takes absolutely no processing, shoots through the liver, right into the bloodstream, delivers the mitochondria, delivers sunlight. So the apple will light you up in a matter of minutes. The high fructose corn syrup, which is the same molecules, the same atoms, but just the reverse image, the mirror image. And suddenly the liver can't figure out what it is. And so it processes it as a cholesterol, a triglyceride, and it ends up causing cardiovascular disease and diabetes and death. A feeling projected on the mind becomes its mirror image, And the mind interprets it or calls it an emotion, categorizes it. Now the body can't figure out what the hell to do with that thing. And so the Chinese didn't quite take us maybe all the way to this, but I think that they're, what Confucius was telling us, and certainly if you've ever read the Tao Te Ching, almost every stanza in the Tao Te Ching is telling us something about the importance of fully embodying a feeling so that it will metabolize through your body. And so this is the antidote to all those stored emotions, is full feeling. If you allow yourself to really feel it, then it will, like a big wave on the ocean side, that big wave will come through and clean up the beach real quick. And so what we need to do to cleanse our bodies of all of these stuck emotions that were the high fructose corn syrup of all the feelings that we had when we were children, and we blame our parents who aren't actually who we're from, with the stories of they created such and such emotion, when in fact you created the emotions that are diseasing your body. Nobody else could create them because you had to take a feeling and pervert it to an emotion in your mind. And so you neither came from your parents, nor did they actually pollute your body with anything. That was you polluting your own body with an emotion because you were taught to be afraid to feel. And so it's an invitation this week for all of us to maybe leave France with the understanding that if we are going to be fully restored to our original design, every 3 days the gut goes back to a child's gut. Every few years the heart goes back to a child's heart, fully rebirthed, if you can clear the emotions that were lodged there through your transmutation of a feeling into an emotion. And so opening up the aperture of your feelings is your magic sauce. And so as we sit in silence this week, it's something for us to really work on. It's just the simple question, a very simple inquiry of what am I actually feeling? And to know what you're feeling, you're gonna have to get out of your head. And you're sure is gonna have to get out of the heart. Because both of those things completely contort these feelings into emotions. And this is where the real disease of the heart has crept into humanity, as we have been taught this emotional construct of love, this emotional construct of joy, this emotional construct of happiness. Emotions last for about 7 seconds in the neurology of a human being. And so it's a cocaine strike. And so you're out there looking for that cocaine hit, that dopamine rush from an emotion all the time if you're trying to live life from the heart. And you're a black hole for activity. You're a black hole for the next feeling so that your heart can feel an emotion. Because it's been told that's where all the important things happen. You don't realize that the most important sensory systems that are there for feeling are not actually in either of those two centers. There's 12 sensory systems throughout the body. We're very familiar with the 5 senses of the brain, which is taste, smell, sight, the auditory, etc. But we have forgotten that there's each of these chakra centers, which there's a minimum of 7 if you count them that way, but most Chinese practitioners of yang think there's 12 or 17 or 24 of these chakras. And these are the sensory organs that really never lie. The 5 senses of the brain are constantly lying to you. And that's really disconcerting because the brain spends about 80% of its volume paying attention to those 5 things. So if you're going to be in the brain, you're going to be paying attention to those 5 senses. And at least 4 of those 5 are constantly lying to you. There's a little bit of solace that there's one sense of the brain that's actually telling you the truth all the time. And interestingly, appropriate for our journey of the path of the rose here is the scent. Your sense of smell is the only sensory system that's not lying to you. And this is taught in the ancient Kabbalah teachings. And so the Kabbalah sciences understood that the other 4 senses of the human, and the most potent of these being the sense of sight, are completely lying to you in the same way that the emotion is a perturbation of the feeling. The eyes actually invert reality to give you the perception of what's around you. And so we call it a green grass or green trees. But in fact, that tree and that grass is actually the entire rainbow. It's vibrating, it absorbed the entire rainbow. And so the tree is actually every single band of light except for green. And it reflects it off as saying, that's not me. And we call it green. And so what are we doing to each other? Are we actually making assumptions about everybody we see around us because our eyes see what they aren't? And so we categorize them very quickly and walk around with our visual cortex dominating our experience. We say that person's like that person's like that, when in fact they're probably showing you the one thing they are not. And this gets back to that Vesica Pisces that we were talking about yesterday. There's some bright version of yourself that you're out there projecting, but my guess is that is probably not you. It's the version of you that you found out the world would accept or that the world would reward. And so you're running around performing that thing, not realizing that it's eclipsed the real version of yourself that you can't see with your eyes when you look in the mirror. And you can't taste and you can't hear because you're paying attention with your brain as to who you are. Or you're paying attention out of the heart center to try to experience emotionally what you are, especially in a social context. And so we have to start learning how to use these other sensory systems again. And so the chakra system, 7, 12, 24, doesn't matter your perception of how many there are. The point is your body is in an extremely accurate sensory system in the electromagnetic field. So these chakras being bundles of electromagnetic energy that are distributed throughout the torso to above the crown. These centers are incredibly accurate sensory systems. You can think of it like a Geiger counter picking up radiation, or another one might be that little needle that flutters when there's a little tremor and then the earthquake. And so the sensory systems of the chakras are extremely tuned to different aspects of nature. And this is why you get truth bumps, right? You get those goosebumps when somebody says something that you actually have no idea what they're talking about. You have no idea about the science they're talking about, but then they'll say something and you're like, well, that's true. I don't even know what that means, but that is true. How do you know that? These are the other chakra systems tuning into coherence ultimately. And so you can feel coherence at a very accurate level, and we've learned to not trust that. And you're taught at a very early age not to trust that. In fact, you're taught that that's just not true. In fact, it's lying to you, so you need to suppress that completely. Because as a kid, your mom's like, you need to be nice to the uncle, give your uncle a hug. Well, that uncle is creepy as fuck, and you know it as a child. And you're sensing all of the right things, and then that child is programmed you need to be nice, you need to suppress that energy. It's just your uncle. And now that kid is confused and thinks that it needs to love that feeling that just sensed off in it, that there's something really dangerous about this person. And so we'll spend a whole lifetime trying to bond to people that are actually toxic for us because we were taught to love the thing that triggered this deep sense in us. And so we get confused in the same way that the emotion will confuse the feeling. Our social programming will confuse and reprogram these sensory systems deep in our core. And so these are just some brush strokes of what I saw a lot in my clinic, which was end-stage disease due to the unawareness of these concepts that we're sharing now. And so often my patients would die at the very beginning point of starting to learn how to feel. At the very beginning point of realizing who was masked by that bright, shiny thing that was eclipsing their real core identity their whole life. 3 or 4 months before she died, and she was super functional, very healthy looking person, so nobody could believe that she was about to die. And she told me, we were sitting in this little tiny therapy room. William was my practitioner doing all this weird electromagnetic therapy. So he and I were sitting in there with her, and she just started talking, and we saw this happen a lot where you can hear this sudden shift in somebody who's starting to let go of their stranglehold on life, and they just start to just be alive. And they're not afraid of death anymore, and they're not trying to live. And it's this magnificent, beautiful little shift that happens in their voice that becomes so childlike. And so we would see this a lot in our clinic, where you have a 60, 70, 80-year-old person that's sitting there talking, and then suddenly they take on a demeanor and a behavior and a gentleness that is just like a 6-year-old child. So she suddenly took on that childlike voice, and it was like, you know what? And it was like you could just hear her like waking up in the morning, you know what? I just spent my whole life with the wrong group of people. I want to hang out with people like you guys. Like, you guys are really weird, and you like talk about really strange things all the time. And I actually really am curious about aliens, and I've never talked to anybody about aliens. Do you think aliens are real? And like suddenly there's this little girl sitting in the exam room with us, realizing, this is so, I feel so alive all of a sudden. And so she lived for 3 months in that childlike new curiosity and that remembrance of who she was. And that's all her soul needed, and then she was done. And so we might not need a whole lifetime of this kind of remembering. But boy, is it just delicious if you can get a few minutes of it, you know, and we don't have to beat ourselves up about the journey at all. And she didn't, and that's why you knew she was in a childlike state. Oh, you know what? I just spent 70 years with all the wrong people. But she wasn't mad about it, and she wasn't judgmental about it. She was just like, oh, this is who I am. I love talking about geeky, dorky stuff, and I don't care about the dinner parties and all the things that they do in West Richmond. And so there's just an opportunity for us to like become that child again this week, I think. And you guys are already on that journey, and I get to witness you shifting and doing that. And so last night we experienced a deep understanding of how to energetically rebirth ourselves. And you guys felt maybe for the first time how to spin your field. And I highly recommend you just practice that. The masculine is that outer field. It's spinning, from left to right. It's this giant clockwise thing. And as it's spinning, it's pulling energy from the earth upward towards heaven. And so the masculine is moving the energies of earth up to heaven and then zipping down the axis to push heaven right back down. And then the feminine is spinning inside of that, the opposite direction. And so if you look from above, the masculine is going clockwise, the feminine is going counterclockwise, and the feminine is taking all of that energy on the outside, heaven to earth, and spiraling it down in. And so this is the animating force of life energy. So it makes sense that would need to come from heaven to earth in a sense. And so she's going heaven to earth, and she's pressing energy in, and that energy, as it's spinning around that feminine field, is pressing down into earth, and then it spins, and then the axis goes up the center. And so anytime you're doing Kundalini work, what you're doing is you're tapping into that feminine upward spiral. But I've seen a lot of injuries. My first clinic was Revolution Health Center after I left the university, and I accidentally set this up like 7 miles from the largest ashram on the East Coast. I didn't even know what an ashram was at the time. And so I got to be the de facto doctor to hundreds of yogis that have been living on this ashram since the 1970s. And in that, I saw the worst anxiety disorders I've ever seen anywhere. Is these people that were sitting there in this ashram practicing yoga every day, doing their things, and they couldn't talk to each other about the fact that they had crippling anxiety because they felt like that would mean they're not living a conscious life. And so too often we find ourselves in groups of people where we feel that it's actually even more difficult to be feeling the whole spectrum, and we have to perform some sort of high version of ourselves. And so we become more performative in our efforts to become more present or more spiritual or more conscious. And so I just going to give you one more tidbit here that I think is super important. It's a relatively recent definition that I'd come by. But I defined this because I got so frustrated being thrown on stages with a bunch of crypto dudes talking about AI and how AI was becoming conscious and how AI was going to take over the world. I am so convinced that this is not my reality. Somebody else's reality, that is fine, but that is absolutely not going to happen in my reality, because my reality is so much more intelligent than a computer. I can't even stand it. And so there's no way that a computer, let alone some conglomeration of them, calculating lots of data quickly, are going to equate to what I see happening under a microscope in a single human cell. There's no AI that can do it. It's so spectacular, this thing that we call life. And so I started to really meditate on like, what is this consciousness thing? Because I would keep asking them, well, what's your definition of consciousness? Or you were telling me AI is conscious. What? And it was a shit show. They couldn't really tell me what they were talking about. But they were having very important meetings. It's classic. I get a text message. I'm down in Costa Rica and I'm about to put on one of my 7-day immersive experiences. And the week before me is one of these crypto conferences around AI. And they knew that I was in town. And so I got this text message. Today, Thursday, at 11:11, we would like you to come to a meeting. We're going to be discussing how we're going to scale consciousness through this new multi-billion-dollar company opportunity that we're going to put together. I was just like, well, there is the masculine archetype in one text message. We are going to scale consciousness at 11:11 with a multi-billion-dollar company that we're all going to make lots of money out of. It's just like, this is the most amazing text message that anybody's ever received. And now I'm done as a human being. I like went and did the whole experience and I got this text message and now I can leave. I can see the entire wound. Everything is done. And so I started to really drill down on what the heck is consciousness. And the definition that came through is very simple and beautiful, I think. But it's something that I would like you to also hold as a group, to start to do something different than my parents' generation did with this whole concept of consciousness and awakening. Their generation created this situation where they can read books on this, and even Alan Watts and some of my favorite people bought into this story that consciousness is this ladder of vibrational experiences, fear and guilt and shame and anger, and eventually you get to pride, and then you get a little higher and maybe you have some happiness, and then there's joy, and then there's unconditional love, and then there's enlightenment. And so we have this map, and this is how you have to get, if you're going to become conscious, you got to get up here. And so they all created these books and these charts, and they're all over the place. And it's a disaster because it's, once again, I think not only given us a very closed definition of consciousness, or it's given us a hierarchical one, in that when we're having an emotion that feels positive, we can look around and be like, well, we're more conscious than all those other people that are feeling things. And so it is damned feelings, once again. And so now if you're going to be conscious, you have to really get good at suppressing feelings, to the point where you're an ashram of a bunch of 70, 80, 90-year-olds that are so anxious they can't even leave their own rooms for weeks at a time. They're starving to death because they won't go to the mess hall to eat because they're having a panic attack, and they don't want the people that have been living with for 30 years to know that they are have crippling anxiety. It's horrible. They had trapped themselves in a horrible prison called an ashram. And all of them were walking around in their orange robes, and they'd come into my clinic with their orange robes. It was a disaster. Consciousness is a finite system. Let me back up. Consciousness is the aperture through which a finite system will experience an infinite reality. Consciousness is the aperture through which a finite system will experience an infinite reality. How could it be anything other than that, really, in the end? And so when you think about AI, it quickly sorts everything out. Okay, so here's a finite system of computers that are interacting, and they are dependent on electricity, which we're running out of. And so here's a finite system running on a finite energy source that is looking at a finite data set of human written words, mostly English. Is it possible it's conscious? And this gets me excited because it really helps us sort through the shit really quickly. Is it a finite system that's witnessing an infinite reality? If it is, then what's the bandwidth? What's the aperture through which it's seeing? And this will help us understand how we become conscious, and then how we start to live in vital bodies again. We need to open up our bandwidth to experience everything. This finite system needs to understand the infinite nature of a soul that animated me within my mother's womb from myself. Now I need to open up my bandwidth wide to find all of the impurities that I embodied so that I would not be a light being, but that I would be human. And I would then choose that path so that I could take those impurities, and in their darkness, I could release the light within the darkness through forgiveness. If you were going to sign up for a human journey, you had to sign up for the impurities. If you didn't want impurities and you just wanted to sign up for an incarnation, you'd be a goddamn oak tree. Oak tree has no problems. Like, it's just like oak tree every freaking day. It never wakes up a single morning being like, wow, that sexy beech tree over there, like I need to really improve myself. That beech tree's got something I don't have. Down to a few thousandths of a decimal. And it happens to just slightly favor light and slightly favor syntropy in our universe right now. So there's actually more life, more energy, more creation happening here because of this slight, I'm talking thousandths of a percent increase or imbalance between the light and the dark, the syntropy versus the chaos. So it takes a very tiny amount to create the beauty that we see around us, to come out of vacuum space and create a planet that's spinning in a solar system around a sun. That on that planet there's water, that out of the water comes life, and out of that life comes us. That's a lot of syntropy that unfolds over 15 billion years. And it only takes a slight amount of extra order to keep that ascension going, keep that ascending path of more complexity, more beauty, more intelligence. And so the universe is cooking along for 15 billion years, and it's going through its own metamorphosis through its toroidal field. You guys got to meet your toroidal field the other day. The universe is a toroidal field. It's a giant black hole. So that toroidal field can do what our toroidal field or the toroidal field of Mother Earth is doing right now, which it can go through changes in its geometry of spin. And so that toroidal field can actually spin in more and more complex geometries. The one that I laid out for you is a three-dimensional one, and that's what our brains can comprehend. But it turns out that there's a five-dimensional toroidal field. It turns out the fourth dimension is a very unstable state for a toroidal field, so it has to go to the fifth dimension very quickly. We'd been in 3D spin as an Earth since probably the origin of it. And then suddenly it goes to the 4D, and it's only there for a few months because it's such an unstable geometry, and so it falls into the fifth dimensional spin. So Mother Earth by 2017 is going full 5D. She's a tesseract, which means that we're able to cross boundaries of space, time, and the rest. Mother Earth is starting to communicate cross boundaries. Insane. I was living in Encinitas at the time, and my brother-in-law was a helicopter pilot. Once a week, he'd see another UAP that'd come very close to his helicopter, and it looked like, he would describe them, looked like giant rafts, like the rubber rafts that you'd go down a white water with. Giant rafts, and sometimes they had beings that were sitting in that raft-looking thing, and then it would shoot down into the ocean at high speeds, disappear. And so he was experiencing this right off the coast of Southern California, and the Navy is starting to report so many problems by 2020. They're in a daily contact of the Navy with these UAPs. Some of them are orbs, some of them are triangles, all kinds of things going on, that Trump, right towards the end of his first administration, finally tries to declassify all of the UFO UAP data. And he does that by the demands of the Department of Defense, because they're not getting any information out of the Department of Energy where all the secrets are held there. And so he puts together the UAP UFO task force, which ends up being headed by David Grush. I'll tell you over dinner if anybody's interested in that whole story, but it's an incredible story of a multi-dimensional reality that started to unfold on the planet in the 1940s, actually 1933, really accelerated in the 40s, and then the lid came off in 2017. And so there's something unfolding on the planet as we go into tesseract mode. Much easier for multi-dimensional realities to be expressed on a planet in this 5D state. And your field is in a three-dimensional state, trying now to pop into this five-dimensional reality. And so what the invitation is by the practice we did the other night is, I want you to be the biology of the future human that jumps past our extinction path that we're currently on, which is very real. 110 countries in the world are now in extinction level birth rates. 110 countries. There's another 85 that are at neutral. They can't increase their population. There's only 3 countries that are increasing the population of humanity right now. 3 out of 196. And no, this doesn't get new somehow. Somehow we're still very impressed with this guy who fills steel tubes with rocket fuel and explodes them. They shoot up in the air and they fall back to Earth, and we're just so amazed. And we call him the smartest guy on Earth, we make him the richest man on Earth. It's the most ludicrous distraction on the planet. And then another rich guy comes along and says, I'm Larry Ellis, and I've got Oracle, and we have now conscious AI, so I'm now the richest man. And so we have this broken masculine that's trying to scale some sort of old version of consciousness on a planet that's already in the 5D state. And the invitation is for us to just leap past all of that chaos and really step into our birthright, which is a being that was born just in time to experience the shift of your toroidal field to a 5th dimensional reality. Turn your field over to Mother Earth in the same way that the mother would turn her womb over to you. Are you ready for Mother Earth to rebirth you? And that's what's happening when we sit in a forest quietly and put our bare feet in a river. And the tears that come to me in that time is me getting ready to surrender completely. And my buddy surrendered this week and went multidimensional. And we call it death. His children are really angry at him right now because he's kind of estranged from his kids, and they're angry at him that he died too early and they didn't get to be angry at him long enough and all this. He went multidimensional. And so you're going to do it inside or outside the body. It's absolutely no judgment on which one it takes. Either way, you're not doing anything. Dying is the coolest thing that ever happens. It's the moment you finally stop just doing anything. Oh, why was I working so hard to do that? And so we have an opportunity to rebirth in these bodies, and I think the opportunity is massive because if you will jump yours to 5D, your children, grandchildren, and the beings around you that may not have come out of your womb, but are certainly born of your ecosystem, are waiting to vibrate in that frequency. These kids are born into this 5th dimensional reality. So any child born after 2017, their toroidal field was already being affected by a Mother Earth that was in 5D. So that gets me really curious. And so why are these kids so fucking smart that are coming through? Is because they're in a multidimensional toroidal field. And so the amount of information they have access to is exponentially more than I had as a 3-dimensional toroidal field. And so physiology, physics is upgrading on a planet, and the universe is also a toroidal field. And this gets me really convinced that we are right now potentially with our finger on the pulse of why humans exist. Because if we needed a species to go behind the veil, forget everything, forget that it's complete, forget that it's actually from source, forget that it is source, and suffer through the pain that happens when an entire species goes into a collective abandonment disorder, which then guarantees it to a destination of addiction. And so a species rampant with addiction due to our collective abandonment disorder is born on a planet, bizarrely, on a chakra center of a universe. Why would that happen? Why would you sign up? Why would 8 billion souls that can see everything, that see no time, see no space, they see the beginning and the end of a life before they enter the womb, why would a soul that is outside of time want that journey? Unless it's a super calling. This might be the highest calling that a soul can do in the universe. At the moment that the universe is ready to go multidimensional. The universe, it turns out, a lot of astrophysicists think have been in the 12D spin for a long time. A 12-dimensional toroidal field is beyond human, mind comprehension because we're so busy in the 3D here. We have a hard time with a tesseract. Tesseract is a supercube. It's a cube that's suspended at the corners to another larger cube, and then it inverts. And so there's 3-dimensional videos that you can watch of a 5D model, so it's wrong. But it is cool to watch the 3D projection or impression of what the tesseract is actually doing. It bends your mind. It looks like, it looks like an Escher drawing come to life, And so that Escher drawing is happening in the 5D. The 17D is beyond our capacity to depict because we don't have the methods of communication, because we don't have the methods of feeling intact to understand dimensions this high. But the universe is at a 12D ready to go to 13 dimensions. And then the 13th dimension, and isn't it typical that we're told that 13 is a bad number? And if you look how 13 plays through magic and how it plays in the things like your tarot deck and everything else, 13 is the dimension at which a closed system becomes an open system, which means the universe is about to go connect to the multiverse. The place at which it would connect to the multiverse would depend on the frequency of vibration of its entire organism. And so would it be clever for a universe to stack the cards of possibility towards an ascension process for itself by putting a species in a center of a chakra that is going to be birthed into darkness and to be equipped with a technology that can take that darkness into light and slightly change the ratio of dark to light in a universe that's about to go to 13th dimension, about to kick them. If just a tiny, tiny fraction is enough to create the centipede of the beauty of the universe, if we slightly increase that light, do we fundamentally change the entire trajectory of a universe as to where it connects to the multiverse? I think humanity could be this grand of a story. And if you've read the Pleiadian prophecy, it gets at this. The Pleiadian prophecy 2020 is a very short book that will blow your freaking mind. It was written in 2012. Pleiadian prophecy 2020. It's basically a conversation with a Pleiadian entity, and a lot of simple questions are asked, and one of them is basically like, how are humans going to ever get as high as you? How can we ascend to become as good as the Pleiadians? And the response is almost laughter, like, no. Y'all are so much more important and more powerful than we are. We're just trying to help you get to your power. We're here nursemaiding you to you. When you step into your full power, the entire universe is going to be in supplication to you. You are the glory. You are the most powerful beings in the universe. You just don't know it yet. And so we're here to help keep you safe until you make this jump. And so I don't know all the pieces that would be necessary for us to make this jump, but it seems to be that we are becoming aware of them. And I think that it has something to do with clearing our toroidal fields and being willing to be rebirthed by Mother Earth. She's ready to rebirth her children. If you haven't heard the telepathy tapes, tap into the telepathy tapes. I've got about a 2.5 hour, I think they've actually broken it up maybe, but in the second one we talk about the way in which plants are changing communication so that humans can go telepathic again. And so that'll be a fun couple episodes that will come out around that subject of why this fad of plant medicine rushing around the world right now. 500 ayahuasca ceremonies every weekend in Los Angeles now. Most of it crypto dudes claiming now to be shamans that are scaling consciousness in Los Angeles. So what could possibly go wrong? We're good to go. And so I think that there's an opportunity for us, though, to take solace that the plants are part of this 5D shift. And they had to go to this more complex toroidal field the moment Mother Earth did. And there was no difficulty for an oak tree to go 5D. Kind of obvious next step, probably. And so the plant life around us and our autistic children are in this fifth dimensional reality. And so towards the end of the first season of the telepathy tapes and that podcast, you'll get to find out about the hill. And I had lots of autistic kids in my clinic over time, and it is uncanny how they have the same stories about where they go at night, what they're doing, how they communicate. They can't even talk, but they'll type to you on their little rapid keyboards that aren't even alphabets, it's more like Sanskrit that they communicate through. And so they're remembering pre-written language, and that's how they're communicating. Sanskrit was a pre-written language in the sense that it was tonal. And the shape of the letter mimicked the tone. And so the letters were hieroglyphs rather than abstract representations of something. And so Farsi is probably one of the other few languages, and that's, of course, the language that Rumi wrote in. And so Rumi's poetry is so potent because he wrote in a non-representative language. He wrote in a pure tonal. And so all of these are brushstrokes into our new possibility. And I invited Andrea to lead us through some stuff tonight because you have an incredible doula among you here. And so she and I are going to go back and forth for a few minutes. She's studied with an incredible colleague that we share in common that has created this 4 baskets understanding of kind of the process of birth. And so I want us to go kind of quickly through the framework of the 4 baskets, because if our goal now is to rebirth or let Mother Earth rebirth us in this 5th dimensional reality, we need to learn how this process happens, and we need to take it seriously in the sense that this would be the most powerful nightly meditation for you to do, is to surrender to your subconscious world the opportunity to go from 3D to 5D in your toroidal field. So you're going to learn how to spin it, and then you're going to turn the geometry over to Mother Earth. Surrender yourself as a womb of the earth. Surrender your whole field to Mother Earth to recreate, rebirth you. So let's go through those. Thank you, Andrea, for jumping in bravely without any understanding what's happening.
So I came totally cool in my head. I have enough time to meditate and feel into how it's going to flow, especially because we had a conversation last night about it. But yeah, it's totally fine.
Here we go.
Here we go. The only thing we can do. It's kind of like birth. Once you're in it, the only way out is through.
It's a premature pregnant labor that we went into here. Okay.
And yeah, the 4 baskets, I'm gonna try to put it in, I'll probably do many different ways in which I'll just explain a little bit of what it really is and then kind of give analogies so that we can understand a different perspective of it. And as we've been experiencing and remembering, we are energetic beings from the beginning. And before we come, in the same chakra system, we leave through the root chakra of our mother, which is the last energy that we experience from her. But we come in through her crown system, first her chakra. We're it's just ether. That's what we are before we, and then we are a thought and maybe a vision, and then we're spoken of, and then we are, feeling love and everything that's her will and what she plans or doesn't plan to do. And then right in the womb is where we start to take shape and form into this human body that we create for ourselves. And then we leave through the last energy center that she has, which is what roots her, or doesn't, to herself, actually, right? And the process of the 4 baskets, and Catherine, I wanna name Catherine Lightfoot here, because she is the one that taught me these through a beautiful story that, I don't know, do I have time for this story? Mm-hmm. I have the time for a story because it's really magical. We moved to the Big Island, and when you're there, you have to buy a car pretty fast because you kind of have to drive around a lot, and you want it to be a good car too. And so my husband, Will, finds this car, and I remember it was 9:30 at night, and he says, I'm going to go meet this guy to see the car. I'm like, okay. He goes, comes back, wakes me up, and says, I'm going to go drive him because I'm buying the car. And then the next day, he says, the drive was so magical. We have to go stay there, even for a weekend. I don't know where it is, but it's kind of in this area. So we find an Airbnb. We find the people because they look really awesome and pretty cool in the picture. And we're like, let's choose those. Okay, those people, they look great. And as we're driving there, it is a magical, magical drive. And we turn to the road, and he says, oh, this is the same road I dropped the guy off where I bought the car. So this is perfect. And then we turn into the driveway, and he says, you won't believe it, but this is the same driveway. And we park the car, and Kiko comes out, and she says, the first thing, is that Philip and Catherine's car? And we're like, yeah. And she says, they were house sitting for us. And we're like, we just bought it from them. And then, we learned that she was going back to the United States to finish her midwifery practice. And from everything we had heard, we probably recognized that we would have gotten along with them really well. Some months later, after we moved into this neighborhood, in the same road, actually, I get pregnant with my 3rd child. And my friend that I tell, the first person I tell, who happens to be a woman that was born in Guatemala that I met on this road, and we became really close friends. I tell her I'm pregnant, and she says, Catherine and Philip just moved back to the island. Maybe you want to meet them, because she now is like an official midwife. She's her certified. And I said, okay, well, maybe I should, And I'm walking down on the spring equinox. I'm doing a lantern walk with my sons to celebrate it. And I stop at a neighbor's house to say hi. And she looks at me. She's like, oh, Catherine and Philip are here for dinner. Would you like to meet them? And I'm like, I guess I have to meet Catherine finally. And honestly, the moment I saw her, I knew it in my heart. I'm like, oh, she is the one I'm going to do this birth with. And yeah, we meet, and immediately I tell her I'm pregnant right away. And we start connecting on her being our midwife. And she tells me pretty fast in our relationship that the 4 baskets is something that she does. And she explains to me what it is, how it came to her. Well, she was doing a 10-day silent meditation retreat, and she had this vision. And the Vedic monks that she was with tell her later what it is. This very ancient knowledge. And what they tell her is that their belief is that the 4 baskets holds the key to everything that's wrong in our society. Anything that's been disrupted and that is affecting us comes back to the root is in one of these 4 phases in the process of becoming a human being. And that if it came to her, it was probably because wherever she lives was in real need of remembering this. So she has to bring it back. And she's a midwife, so she's going to it's perfect for her. And so I sat with the 4 baskets with my daughter, and I can see it really did transform me. And later on, I had a friend that was her daughter was 18, and she was going through a lot of really intense and dark stuff. And it was just a very hard thing to experience. And at the same time, we had an 18-year-old German workaway girl staying with us. And she was experiencing the same things, the same type of depression, the same type of self-doubt, lack of self-worth. And she was sharing this with me, this German girl, and I was starting to realize the connection between my friend's daughter and her, and that they were both 18. And I was asking questions about birth to this 18-year-old girl, and I was realizing I knew that they both had come through a really rough birth. Both parents had been, they were really young, and there were a lot of similarities. So I called Catherine, and I asked her to teach me how to help other people understand this process better, because I'm seeing it so obvious to me in these girls. So we sat down and we did it. She taught me, and it's basically what I'm going to share with you. And so I wanted to honor Catherine, because this is not my wisdom. And we both understand it's borrowed wisdom, but for a purpose. Catherine uses the story of the bowl of light, which is really a Hawaiian story. And the story says that whenever a child was born, he was given a koa bowl with a kukui net, which is a bowl of light, to remind you it's a representation of your true light. And every time you did something negative, either towards yourself or to others, you were asked to place rocks in this bowl to remind you that your actions towards yourself or others were dimming your own light. But whenever you did something right for yourself or for others, you were gifted the opportunity to fully empty the bowl, no matter how full it was. Those actions were there to remind you that your light is still there. And we basically feel, Catherine and I, that the 4 baskets are this. That's why she called them baskets, so you remember that there's just spaces where things are being held, but they're not meant to stay there forever. And it's really your choice, what you take out to continue to bring this light of your own forward. So that's the story of how I got to know this 4 baskets wisdom. And the 4 baskets is a process that are energetic experiences as we form into a human. And there's 4 phases. And the first phase is from the moment of conception, when that happens, to the first 8 weeks. And it's really, I'm feeling out. I'm just going to say the 4 of them, and then I'll maybe say something. After those 4 8 weeks, we move into the second phase, which is the gestational period until the onset of labor. So basically all of our growth, where our body's actually fully being formed, and everything that our mother's experiencing, how we also have a little bit of this experience without understanding what it is, because we're not thinking, right? We don't understand any of that. It's in the energy that we're transforming into our body. Birth. The third basket is the birth itself, which is pretty big. It's a transformation of change, right? We are leaving everything we've known up to that moment behind, and we're in a huge portal. I mean, not huge, actually. It's really like we go from having all this space in the womb to squeezing into almost what would be considered no space for the size that we are. It's darker. There's a lot of pressure. Even the heartbeat, which is what we are used to, guiding us. That's our compass. Our mother's heartbeat is our compass. It sounds muffled there. It's barely, but then we just feel it, as a pulse, like what it really is. And then, however that birth process might look different for us. Hi. Perfect. And after the birth, it's the fourth basket, which is really important as well, which is the first 6 hours after birth, which is really our actual first experience in the world that we come into, how safe we feel or unsafe, how it welcomes us, if it even welcomes us, and if it even acknowledges everything we just did to get here. Most are unaware of the acknowledgement that we require after the work we've done to leave the womb. It's a lot of work. And most of the time, it's just the doctor, the staff, if we're blessed, the mother, and maybe somebody pays attention to this being that just came here and everything are required for this being to come. And so the 4 baskets really give us a different sense and perspective maybe of how our experience was, because we won't remember it with our brain because there's no memory of it. But we remember it in ourselves because of how certain things make us feel, certain situations, certain people, certain words. Sometimes change itself makes us contract completely. And yes, there are experiences in life that have aided to us feeling that way. But really, it's how did our mother feel about going into labor? How did she contract because she didn't feel like she was supported enough? She didn't actually know what was happening. She didn't know. And so her way of handling that situation was to contract when it started instead of surrendering. So for most of us, if that was the experience we had, when we signaled, it's time, I'm coming, the answer we got back from our environment was, I don't know what to do. I don't know if you can come. What am I going to do? And so we hesitate too, like, I'm ready, but you're saying no, and what, I still have to come? Sometimes I feel like that what creates that labors that are false labors. I, in my heart, feel like baby's saying, I'm ready, and mom is saying, no, wait, the room's not ready. No way, I still don't know what to do with this. This can't be labor, it's the wrong night. I still have things planned until the weekend, And sometimes I feel babies are like, fine, I think I can make it another 4 days here, fine, I'll give you that, But I'm still gonna try and test. And sometimes moms are like, don't even think about it. Oh, this is it. And it just happens because the signal, the call and response that life is in a relationship, it should be. And this is a very beautiful dance and a very beautiful relationship between the child and the mother. I signal I'm ready, then she signals, okay, you're ready. This is your journey. And yet it's a beautiful rite of passage for the mother, but it's our first rite of passage as a human. Like, this is how we start. And when we don't have the sacredness of this rite of passage, we start already with the energy of something, like we are not being welcomed or we're not being acknowledged in that way. And four baskets is really important too. And for men as well, you know, this is not just if you have a womb and you're going to give birth. This is you came through a womb as well. And so it's understanding how you react or don't at all to certain energies, to certain situations, to certain people, to yourself. Because really the first imprints on us is how our mom views and feels about herself, is how we start feeling and viewing ourselves. So it might not even be that I actually don't think I'm worthy. She thought she wasn't worthy. And we just experienced that heartbeat together. And I felt, oh, when somebody speaks like this, it means I'm not worthy. But it's not you. You've always known that you're worthy. And maybe she wasn't supported enough. And now you feel like even though there's people around you, and maybe they are supporting you all the time, and you're still like, I'm not supported. You're still not supporting me enough. And it's not even you, it's just the nature that you existed in felt unsupported. So your reality became, nobody's supporting me, nobody's listening to me. During the process of the birth, if a mom is not heard, if she doesn't have her voice to say what she wants and not to do, then we feel, as we're in that root center, that whatever grounds her and how she feels about her whole experience in this life is the last thing we experience with her. And so if she doesn't feel heard, we come in feeling like we're not going to be heard either. It's in ourselves. And so every opportunity presented to us is through an experience of maybe not feeling heard and then realizing, am I not really being heard, or am I just feeling like that? And in Spanish it's interesting because when you say however you're feeling, you say me siento. You're actually telling yourself, I feel this. So you're not saying I'm angry or I'm not supported. You literally say, I'm feeling not supported. I'm feeling like you don't hear. I feel this. So it's an interesting thing how language can all of a sudden become the affirmation of like, I'm not worthy versus I don't feel worthy. Because when you leave that door of I feel unworthy, you can sit with it differently and see if it's really you or if it was something that was given to you. And then I put the analogy, a very human one. And it's great because we've all traveled. So it's like your mom packed the suitcase or the backpack for you with whatever was there for her, within her reach, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, and for wherever she was headed to, not where you were. Not because she didn't love you, just because she wasn't looking for that. She was in her own process. So she packed a suitcase or a backpack, whichever you prefer traveling with, and then she hands it to you. And then you take off on your journey. And then you get to Hawaii realizing that she packed it for North Canada. And you're like, what the heck is all this here for? I'm never gonna use it, but I'm gonna try, I'm gonna make the best of it. I just made it all the way here carrying this luggage. And none of it is helpful to me, or some of it might be. Maybe we both needed sunscreen. So that seems like it was perfect, but maybe nothing else. Or maybe it was the other way around. Or maybe she gave you a set of binoculars and you really wanted a magnifying glass because you didn't want to see things from a distance be closer. You just wanted to see things even closer. And however it looks like. And the four baskets and just becoming aware of them, just becoming aware of it, like right now. We don't even have to go through each of them any deeper for anybody, but just that awareness lets you know that there's things to unpack in your suitcase that are no longer for the journey that you are choosing to go on. And you can just take them out. Literally, you can literally just take them out and put them out there. You don't have to ask why it was there, demand an explanation of why they didn't think about putting something better. There's nothing, you just take it out and put it down. So it's gotta be looking at your own journey and see what you're willing to keep in that luggage that you're not making space for, something that you actually want to put in there. And like you don't really owe her a thank you or an anything for what's in there. Just the compassion of understanding that it was what it was and that's it.
I have heard the word in a lot of the transformational process. And so But now, my question is menopause. Is that another, I feel that's another possibility for women.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I have scientific proof other than what I feel, that to think that every single rite of passage is an opportunity that our brain gets rewired for the next phase that we're headed to. And I don't know if that you would agree with that, but that's what I've always felt. And I feel like, yes, menopause would be. And thank you so much, by the way, for bringing the awareness of the mothers. And I meant to say that, that anybody that's a mother here, even if you didn't give birth the way you thought you should, there's, it is heartbreaking. Well, as a birth keeper, I'd like to remind you that you still were the vessel for a miracle. There's no real perfect birth. Even a cesarean birth, it is a birth, you know? And it's when we take that expectation list of like, almost like what he was saying, in that I'm really elevated and I'm more conscious than these people that are not conscious because they still experience hate or they still experience this emotion. In the same way, it's kind of happening in the birth world too. Like if you didn't birth this way, with this sound bowl, with this color of candle, then you didn't birth the right being. And it really, I know it sounds funny, but in the birth world, it's actually really strong. You know, you're not a warrior mother if you didn't free birth. Did you know? If you had a doula, you had some support. You didn't know how to follow your body. And it's really just leaking into the separation that can cause just somebody else's expectation of their projection, right? Because any birth is a beautiful birth if we see the lesson that the birth is trying to teach us. Because a cesarean birth has beautiful lessons in it, if you're willing to sit and retrieve that. And when I mean retrieve, I don't mean with guilt, right? I mean, you can sit through your process of how you experience pregnancy with your children and just take back what doesn't belong to them and put it down yourself. Because if it's yours,
Can you repeat that?
that you can take back anything that happened during the process of your pregnancy. And what I mean by just become aware of certain situations and you sit with it, you feel, and you let it rush through you. You let it out, and then you put it down, because you don't have to carry it forward either. You know, like feeling like you didn't do the right thing is carrying an extra luggage too. So just becoming aware of it and sitting with it and allowing yourself to feel everything that comes through with it, and then just, that's where it ended. Almost like compost, right? We can talk more.
I appreciate you saying that because, again, you knew what you knew, and we are so intimate. I just heard that I would turn to transformation, and now I can feel the missing. And I can actually feel my birth. You didn't go birth.
I would also point out that the child was on their path, you know. And so once you realize the child's coming from its own source, then you can almost understand why it would choose a cesarean, you know, over a vaginal birth, because it saw if it went through a vaginal birth, it would have been trapped for some period of time, something would have happened, the cord would have been something, and so it needed this path. Or the mother was carrying a vaginal flora that would have predisposed that child to chronic allergies and immune dysfunction and all this, and so it was born sterile through a C-section and adopted her skin flora and the environment around her, you know, the outdoors over the next couple of days as their dominant garden. So we can't imagine the intelligence of souls entering their path. And maybe they needed the cesarean so that they would have a dysfunction in their body, which would be one of those imperfections that makes it human. You know, and so we just can't calculate, you know, what the soul saw and agreed to. But the soul saw and agreed to it and signed up for that, you know. And so yes, that's my path, which might be death at age 2 from some weird cancer. You know, and so these souls are coming in with these very clear paths, and I just very much believe there is not a single thing out of place. Mm-hmm. Everything is freaking perfect. And I've had tens of thousands of people die around me to tell me that in their last breath. Like, oh my God, it's all perfect. Never mind about everything else I thought for 90 years. Like, just didn't see the whole pattern. It's perfect, don't worry. And so everything is perfect. And this is where we get conscious. This is where we really open the aperture to see an infinite reality from our finite perspective, is when we lose judgment on everything, which is the last thing that the Course in Miracles says. And the Course in Miracles is a tome that's so difficult to read, but the last freaking sentence is, the last thing that I will do in this human body is let go of judgment. And I was excited about that for humanity until I realized I was excited about it myself, because it says the last thing I'll do in this human body. And so could I build myself and rebirth myself a new body right now if I let go of judgment? And I think that's the path that we're on this week. If you are willing to let go of judgment on everything and turn your energy field over to a Mother Earth that's trying to rebirth you, menopause or anything else. Humanity is basically in its collective menopause. We can't have children anymore. And so we are collectively at this turning point, this rebirth opportunity that you're both speaking to so beautifully. And so I get very excited about the moment we're in. And I just want to step real quickly through the 4 baskets in conjunction with your birth right now and think through how do we support those 4 baskets for your rebirth, geometry. But before we jump into that, I want to make sure we get any other questions or thoughts for Andrea around the birth process, because this is a super important topic that's super integrated into your feeling body, your emotional memory is birth. And so the births you've had, the births that have been missed, miscarriages, we should speak to probably miscarriages and to abortions and all of that, because these are also beautiful things that are perfect. So any thoughts?
That was going to be my question, actually.
For the microphone.
Oh, thank you. I wanted to say thank you to both of you, because this is so beautiful. And I just wondered what was happening energetically if a mother has been through miscarriages, maybe multiple miscarriages, before the soul comes in, the one that comes through.
Each experience is unique, but most moms don't have the space given to them to really grieve a miscarriage in the way that the whatever it is that she's feeling is stored in that same womb that the next. Is that where? Because we really store a lot of our all of these feelings as women in the womb, right? Everything is stored that can't come out, and that's why it's so important. Like when Zach was sharing before, of us really allowing ourselves to feel everything that can come through. And it's going to happen in however way, but because once we don't, we store it in the womb, and that's the space where the next being is going to grow, right? So energetically, there are traces of the unprocessed grief. It's not traces of like, it could happen again as a miscarriage and that can cause another miscarriage, but traces of the unprocessed grief of the mother that we connect with. But it doesn't mean that it becomes us, right? But we do tap into the energies that are stored in the womb. So it could potentially show up in a different way with us then carrying this unprocessed grief and it showing up in our life with maybe the unexplained grief that we continuously feel and
Fear of loss.
Yeah, fear of loss, or fear of loss is exactly how you would say it. Yeah. And that could happen, that we get to see it happening in a child where it's clear that this child is experiencing continuous emotion that doesn't add up to what he's experiencing or she's experiencing in life. And that's kind of where I see the imprint happens, where if we can hold space for whatever emotion is coming through, even if in our logical mind it doesn't make sense why they would be feeling that way, it doesn't have to. It's just a feeling of something is off with how you're experiencing what's actually happening. And that's where like a lot of us get conditioned of like, you're just overreacting since we're little. This is not such a big deal, you know? But it's through that human experience of I just lost my favorite teddy bear, of a real big loss, that we're like, you're attached to the teddy bear and so you're overreacting. And so then we create those stories where like we're the issue and we have to toughen up a little bit. It's just a teddy bear. We can just go get another one. But sometimes those unprocessed emotions show up through little human experiences like that are allowing us to sit with the grief of a loss that might not mean anything to the conditioned human brain, adult brain, but means a lot to the almost pristine child brain, in which the child is just feeling. I'm just feeling something really, really big. And what happens there is most likely the parents are not the ones seeing that it's in their own expression that's coming through and with their child. And it's a great opportunity for both of us to sit and grieve it out and cry through whatever is happening, and allows that door to open for us to be able to re-experience something that we did experience. And that's when it's the reclaiming, and it's not a bad thing to reclaim that, because it allows you to like feel it, and just then it's at peace. It just needs to be felt. They're just emotions that are not emotions. There are experiences that our mother had that weren't ever actually felt or held, and when the opportunity is presented, they're just asking to be felt as energies so that they can flow instead of being contained. Did Anna answer your questions?
Thank you.
Did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I mean, I got to see a lot of amazing stories come through with these topics of abortion and miscarriage, and I think it's very important for us to, again, think about the importance of feeling. It eliminates disease. If you can feel, it will eliminate the underpinnings of the disease. And so it was a relatively young woman. She had 3 kids, and then diagnosed with metastatic colon cancer at age 36. So her kids were quite young. They were like 2 to 8 years old or something like that when she was diagnosed. And she came into my clinic from long distance. She lived in Kansas, and so she came into Virginia, and we went through the usual analysis. Probably farmland toxicity. Grew up around a lot of chemicals, and had all these rationale of why she had these tumors. And she was on the very way out front of the wave of wanting to feel and know everything, and was willing to die. Was one of the least feared persons I've ever experienced, and was so amazed by her. And she's like, my relationship with my husband's wrong. We need to break that up. We need to do this. Her and her husband ended up going on the most beautiful journey I've ever seen, and she died about 7 or 8 years later in one of the most truly enlightened states I've seen a human go into, because she was willing to feel absolute everything. Her aperture was beyond anything that I had ever seen before. And one of the earliest parts of her journey was an inquiry into, breaking across the veil through ego death. And so she wanted to know how to go there. So I gave her some options that are out there, and we teach a lot of breath work and some of the simpler things, but had worked with the Achuar tribe down in Ecuador around plant medicine, and opened up that avenue. So she decided yes, and it's pretty intense. You're a mother of 3 little kids, and you decide you're going to take 2 weeks to leave your family when you might be dying in the next 6 months. She'd been given 6 to 12 month prognosis, and so she goes down to Ecuador, takes these 2 weeks to herself, does plant ceremony, ends up doing ceremony 4 or 5 times over the course of 2 weeks down there with the shaman. And in the second ceremony, she met the 3 miscarriages and 2 abortions she had had, which were her 5 tumors that were metastasized in her belly, she found out. And she met all 5 of those souls, and they were so excited to introduce themselves and tell her exactly why they wanted to be in her womb for a moment, and that she needed to get rid of any sorts of guilt, because they had just needed to come in to hear her heartbeat for a few minutes, because that was the upgrade they were needing on their karmic journey towards more complex expressions. So they just needed to be in her womb to create themselves for a moment. And so they needed to come into a space, create themselves to hear the heartbeat of a mother, to tune to, oh, that's human, so that they could go do their next thing, which might be become an oak tree, And so these souls came and visited her, and each of them, got to meet with her, and she saw their beautiful faces and differences and things. And they were just so grateful that she had surrendered her womb to them, each of them, in exactly how they needed it to unfold. And none of the 5 needed a human journey. None of the 5 needed to come in and go to kindergarten and forget that they were from source and all of the stupid things. They just needed to tune to this vibration and manifest themselves for a moment as a human embryo, go through a few weeks, and at that 8-week mark is when we start to create anatomy. But before that, this is the basket. So you're from conception to 8 weeks. You don't form anything that actually sticks around. At 8 weeks, suddenly the first thing that sticks around forms, and it's your palate, the hard palate. Well, lots of cool things about that. But before that, it's weird things like your neural stripe and things that you can't point to in your own body because they don't exist in the human body. There are these embryonic forms that are like the imagination of what your body is going to become, but they're not the anatomy yet. And so in the first basket, you're in this, cocoon, going through the metamorphosis. Everything's a mess, everything's unordered, and you're kind of this cosmic, expression, vibration of a soul coming through, and that's all they needed. And so most of the miscarriages and abortions will happen in less than 8 weeks, anyways. By the time you're in that second basket, you're starting to form real anatomy, and the journey for a child in that miscarries late in there. They're wanting a real physical manifestation of this human experience in a different way. And so the child's journey in your womb is perfect. And so no matter if you were inspired by the child to have the abortion or inspired by your sovereignty to have your abortion, the child already knew that. And it wasn't like surprise, like, what, abortion? I thought I was fucking gonna go to college. Like, no, not confused. It knew its journey coming in, and it was a necessary journey or the exact perfect journey for its next expression. And so when she came back with those stories, I was just like so mind blown. I started my career birthing babies in the Philippines with international midwives, and then finished my training as a hospice doctor. And she just crunched it all down into one freaking ayahuasca ceremony. I was like, wow. All right, I need to back off even more. And that's basically what I learned over time is I need to back off of anything I think I know, understand, or anything. And I need to be in a constant state of wonderment, amazement, and awe. So I want to zoom in on this thing, but did that get your question?
It did, thank you. My mum had 4 miscarriages before she had me, so that was very good.
Yeah, and so each of those were brothers and sisters of yours that needed the journey exactly like they had. And you picked up on vibrations of them too, so they would have also left their signature there. And so not just mom's environment, they each became a preparatory environment for you to become the woman you are. And so it's a deep gratitude to each of those souls that would have been projecting their song down into that womb long enough to imprint that environment with you. So you're carrying their song with you. You're an amalgamation of that symphony now. There's 5 songs singing inside of you. And that's a beautiful thing to touch.
What I was thinking about was the infertility that has impacted so many people in our in the current generation of childbearing people, and how the lack of baskets, I suppose, impacts them and their journeys.
Perfect intro into where we're going right now. So it turns out that men and women are coming into birth right now. We have to rebirth humanity now. We can no longer create human children. We need to rebirth a species at this tipping point of a universe that wants us to stay in play so we can use the technology of the human heart to move darkness to light through the power of forgiveness. If that's right, if anything in there is correct, we're not coming in now with a womb to birth lots of babies. We're all coming in with wombs, i.e. energy fields, toroidal fields that are ready to be reprogrammed by Mother Earth. And so we're turning our whole body over to Source and saying, make me your clay. Mother Earth, make me your child before there are none. Make me your child so that I can vibrate in a 5th dimensional tesseract and I can move back in time to a birthright. And I can help reprogram a species to not birth the babies of old. We need babies in the 5th dimension. And so we are here to rebirth something in an intensely more surrendered state than ever before. So many women, and I would definitely include men in this, are coming in with the equipment, equipped through their own soul experiences to surrender at that scale.
Right.
And so the women that cannot birth a baby go on that journey only to finally surrender that whole thing. And I've seen it again and again. When she'll finally realize she's not going to be able to have a baby, she rebirths. And now she becomes the woman that she was supposed to be, and she comes in to do a powerful journey, because she didn't come to birth others, she came to birth herself. And that is a powerful, powerful calling. And now, whether you've had babies or you have not had babies, you signed up right now to be at this tipping point, and I believe every single one of you would not have come to France if you weren't fucking ready. You are so tired of being three-dimensional. You're tired of being eclipsed by your own projection. You're tired of waking up every morning wondering, why do I not feel like myself? Why do I feel so unseen by my partners or my spouses or my children, my own parents? Why am I so unseen? These things that you're feeling, these deep feelings, will lead you into the truth. They will lead you into your bright, bright state of the thing that needs to come forward. The moon that's eclipsed right now needs to come forward, and she will wax again. And when she gets to see the light, there will be a whole nother planet there expressed through you, i.e. a new Gaia. And so Gaia is rebirthing her children to go into keystone species status. A keystone species will increase the biodiversity beneath its feet no matter where it is placed. When an elephant walks on land, the microbiome responds and the flora and fauna immediately diversify around the elephant. Same thing with a white lion. Same thing with a beaver. When these animals show up, the wolves in Yellowstone, you put wolves back in Yellowstone and within a single spring, rivers start flowing that hadn't been there. Wait, a wolf? I can imagine the beaver has something vaguely to do with a river, but what the fuck is the wolf doing birthing rivers? Like that is some potent energy field. So to be a keystone species, you have a toroidal field that organizes life around you. This is what you came to be. Stepping back to the original birthright of a human being, which is to be a keystone species that will organize life at a more complex geometry on a planet that is at a heart chakra of a universe that's ready to upgrade and wants just a single burst of authenticity to hit the universe. 40 times higher than love and joy is the signal of authenticity.
I would just love if you could share your perspective on what you just said. Using the wolf example was so key. How do you view the parts of humanity that are so actively fighting against all things that are leading this change? You could even take that example to, given I live in Montana, most of the states trying to eradicate wolves again for the 5th time. So you could expand that in any realm that you wanted to, but.
So first of all, you can't get off topic because we're talking about the entire universe, so everything goes. We're all on topic, everything's included. And so let me just reframe oil companies for you real quick. In 1,000 years, this planet is going to be greener than it's ever been by logarithms. We will have more trees on the surface of the planet in 1,000 years than has ever existed, and that birth is already happening. A couple hundred lakes suddenly appeared in the middle of the Sahara Desert last September 2024, overnight nearly. 75 square miles of lake appeared in the sand dunes of Morocco. Earth is readjusting her water table to rebirth the grasslands of Africa. And when the Sahara goes to grasslands, this whole world goes different. And it happens every 20,000 years. And she's right on the button of doing it. But this time, compared to 20,000 years ago, there will be more carbon available for her next respiration breath than ever in the history of the planet because of the oil companies. Nothing humans are doing are outside of nature. We love to think that we are. We defined it that way. Oxford English Dictionary. You look up the word nature. It is everything in the firmament of the earth, minerals, plants, animals, as opposed to humans or anything humans have made. Not only did we write ourselves out of nature, we wrote ourselves in opposition, as opposed to humans or humans' creations. So somehow we think that oil companies are bad and are doing something terrible to the earth, and it's outside of nature. They are doing something horrifically injurious to the earth. They're destroying ecosystems, they're destroying biodiversity around them, doing all kinds of things. And in the process, they're bringing deep aquifers of carbon out of the middle of the earth so it can be respired by the next breath of Mother Earth. And so this deep injury is being caused by the companies that will actually give the fuel for life to happen at a rate that's never happened before because the planet never had so much carbon available. Whoa, that really screws up the whole activist in all of us. Like, wait, what? So start writing your little gratitudes to the oil companies, ExxonMobil at the top, BP, run down the list because they are literally doing Mother Earth's work. She wants to be greener than she's ever been. And so she is in a breath hold right now. And that's why CO2 is going up in the atmosphere. She engineered a breath hold by engineering humans that would think that themselves kicked out of the garden, not therefore having abundance of food, therefore needing farming, therefore needing chemical agriculture eventually to feed the world. And the chemical companies poured this year 4 billion pounds of glyphosate on her soils, 4 billion pounds into her soils and water systems to make sure she cannot breathe. Because the respiration of carbon from the atmosphere to the greenery of the earth happens through the microbiome of the soil first. What the fuck is going on? She's bringing all of the carbon up and she's holding her breath. And the two industries that are helping this is the oil companies and the chemical companies. The largest two industries in the world is the energy sector and 5 times larger the chemical sector. What the fuck is going on? She is engineering the greatest rebirth in her entire history because why? Because she's a tesseract now. She's in the 5th dimension. She wants the deepest wound that she's ever taken that will produce the greatest opportunity for the most magnificent rebirth that she's ever done. But to do that, she needs more water energy than she's ever had available for the biology that will explode on the surface. Because if she's going to birth the biggest grasslands and the most verdant forests of the world, she's going to need a shit ton of water on the surface of the planet. So she should hold her field. Every 200,000 years, this planet reverses the North and South Pole electromagnetically. The North Pole becomes the South Pole and vice versa. Water follows the magnet. 750,000 years ago, we had our last pole switch. She's been holding her field, strangely skipping at least 2, if not 3 pole switches, so that she's amassing water in some part of her, getting ready to unleash a massive amount of water on the surface of the planet. And just last year, goosebumps, scientists discovered 700 kilometers below the surface of the Earth, an ocean that is 3 times larger than the entire surface oceans of the world. Sitting beneath the surface of the Earth is a water reservoir 3 times the volume of all of the oceans of the Earth. And she's about to flip her poles for the first time in 700,000 years and put as maximum amount of carbon as possible with the most decimated genomics the planet has ever had, because there's more species now than any time in history. You remember at the last extinction, we had ferns and palms. There was no deciduous trees, there was no oaks, no beech, no aspen, just ferns and palms. There was no dolphins, no blue whales, none of the animals we love. There was only freaking giant reptiles that we call dinosaurs. And so at the last extinction, there was a very limited gene pool that under that extinction pressure reimagined itself. And it does it through what we call viruses, which we've damned, of course. But viruses are simply the biology that expresses the imagination of nature that hasn't occurred yet. Viruses are the biology that result from the imagination of nature to the biology that hasn't happened yet. Viruses are the result of us miscoding our genome and then expressing those outside of our body. We do it as a bacteria, we do it as a human. So when we go under stress and we're about to die, we're like, oh, we should just reimagine this whole thing so something survives. Something can come out of my death. You can't destroy energy, you can only change its form. And so let's change form. If we're going to die in this current form, let's make new forms. And so all of the species start misspelling their genome and expressing them outside of their bodies as viruses. And now we have deciduous trees and dolphins and blue whales that are being poisoned with 4 billion pounds of glyphosate a year, a water-soluble toxin that has gone into every river, every ocean, every soil base. And so every single organism right now is re-expressing its genome. The imagination of Mother Nature right now should be giving you absolute freaking goosebumps. Can you imagine what happened? We went from dinosaurs to freaking blue whales, and we went from ferns and palms to deciduous trees and wildflowers. And what the heck? How did that happen with one extinction? It only took one death cycle to reimagine that. And she didn't go back to make dinosaurs again. If I was in charge, Stegosaurus would be back. That's pretty damn cool. That thing's awesome. Triceratops, what the hell? Way cool. Why doesn't she go back in time? Because her imagination is so impulsive for what could be next. Because she lives in a universe that is syntropic, more order. And every time there's more order, it's in an increasing complexity of geometry, therefore more beauty, more intelligence, more biodiversity. So we live in a syntropic universe that never goes backwards in her expression. And so now we have oil companies, chemical companies, and a Earth in a breath hold, in an electromagnetic field shift that's about to unleash water unseen on the planet's surface. And we're about to go more Garden of Eden than this thing's feckin' ever gone. And you showed up right now in a Tesseract moment to see if humans can stay and play. And that's the last question, because she's going to do something magnificent with or without us. And we helped get her there. And she loves us for that. She loves us for that. In one of my plant medicine ceremonies, I experienced the soul of Dr. Fauci. Came into my presence, and I saw his face, and I saw him, and I saw like this angry male face. And then the anger just like melted, and he looked super peaceful. And I was like, oh, wow, I haven't seen that version, almost childlike peace. And then suddenly his soul comes through, and it is the most fucking bright soul you've ever seen. Just like overwhelming amount of light, energy, beauty, pulsing with unconditional love. What is going on? And then it would just fade behind the face and then fade forward again, fade behind the face and fade forward again. And then it started to show me that all of the activists who've tried to speak out against vaccines for the last 50 years had managed to get 4% of Americans concerned about vaccines and the schedule we were following. Then Fauci comes along with this broken male archetype, this angry, egoic thing, and he could say one thing next week, and just like Donald Trump says absolutely the opposite thing the next week, as if it's fucking golden. Week 1, don't wear masks, they're completely useless. Week 2, my God, you can't even go outside, we're gonna arrest you if you don't have a mask on. And suddenly, at the end of that short 6-month period, 64% of Americans are concerned about vaccines. This bright soul came in to wake up humanity and was willing to take the fucking hatred of all of the woke people, all of us who said, you know, damn vaccines, damn Dr. Fauci, all of the doctors screaming at him, all the moms mad at him. That soul was willing. You know what? You need to hate something? Hate me. But I'm going to wake you up. I'm going to get your aperture bigger. We just don't know what's going on and how glorious this story is, because the universe is at stake. A universe wants to go 13D and connect to a high vibration experience. How much calculation is going on the 17th dimensional chessboard? Who's here? For what reason? We got to lose judgment right now. Every soul must be here on purpose for something that has nothing to do with our politics or our science or any fucking human mindset. This is a universe upgrading. And it created a species that would suffer, but equipped it with a human heart that would allow it to forgive the suffering just enough to bring a little light out of the darkness, change the balance of everything, and rebirth the entire universe. It's this magnificent. It's this special that you picked this time to be here. You are an extraordinary soul with an amazing amount of courage, and you're equipped with a human heart. But the human heart is not an emotional thing. The human heart is a felt experience of beauty. The fabric of everything is not love. The fabric of everything is beauty. want you to sit with that. John Lennon was actually wrong about something. Everything is not love. Everything is beauty. What is beauty? Beauty is coherence, which is stacked geometry in space-time to reveal the unseen. Didn't we hear that in the woods today? Didn't we learn that in the woods today? Everything exists so that we can see the unseen. Thank you. Everything exists so that we can see the unseen. What is she talking about? She's talking about stacked geometries in space-time that are making life possible through a concentration of light energy so that we can see it. And then we see the beauty of everything. Fabric of everything is beauty, and wouldn't it take a species that thinks itself separate from everything to be able to see the beauty in just such a way? Because we're the only species that stops and looks at the sunset. The birds just keep reeling as if it's not even happening because they are the sunset. In their experience, there's no difference between them, the tree they're nesting in, and the sun that's setting. It's all one frequency expressed many times in many geometries of light. And so the bird looks out, it's like light, 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 vibration, 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 vibration. And so it's doing the vibration thing. Why would it pause to sit and look at more vibration? God could not see itself until humans were created, and that's what we're taught in Scripture. Mankind was created so God could see itself, and so you will have to go blind so that you can see it. Stop railing each other for everything that can't be seen and everything that you feel unseen for. Stop railing against each other and judging each other. Realize this is what we fucking signed up for. We signed up to be blind so that we could see beauty in a very unique way. So what the hell is the technology of a human heart? It is a magnificent structure called it's an icosahedron is the geometry of it, which is actually the center of a black hole. And so it is in the geometry of a black hole that creates a torrent of water. It's not a pump, it doesn't pump blood. We'll talk about that later if you're convinced it does. It doesn't have enough muscle to pump blood through a vascular system. The vascular system pumps. It is simply the vortex by which water, which is the only molecule that can convert the quantum field to biology. It's the only molecule that allows the quantum field or physics to express biology. And so water is going into this torrent inside of a heart, into a vortex, so that the memory of the universe can express itself and then feel the sensation of unconditional love that's generated by the human when it witnesses beauty. Love is the vibration of a human when it witnesses beauty. This is what you came to be, is blind for a moment so that you could see the beauty, and in that you could utilize that human heart in a vortex that creates the sensation, the feeling of awe and wonderment of the beauty that then becomes unconditional love, and the physics field that is God can feel it because it's water that's translating it between your body and the physics of the universe. The water in your heart is taking your experience of beauty and handing it back to God and say, feel this. Feel this. And so when you see the face of a child and you start to cry, feel that. If you stopped for a sunset, just feel it completely. So that you metabolize the emotions out of your body, so that you can live without disease, so that you can rebirth to your original birthright, to the original design, which is a keystone species that would walk in a garden and biodiversity would spring forth for reasons we don't even understand. Because you are a keystone species that has the capacity to take a little shadow into light, because you not only embodied imperfection, you know how to forgive imperfection. It's not just an embodiment of the impurities, it's the forgiveness of the impurities that gives us a little bit more light at the end of the day. And for that, the universe is in a different frequency. And she's going to connect to another spot in the multiverse in that frequency of unconditional love. So the first basket was conception. And I told you last night, space that has no memory to it. So I'll tell you again that an egg is the brightest thing that happens in the universe. The egg of a woman has 600,000 mitochondria in it. It is literally the brightest concentration of light energy in the cosmos as we understand it as scientists. Nothing else has put that much light energy into a millimeter of space. It's up in the logarithms greater than the sun. A human cell with 200 mitochondria is about 10,000 times brighter than the sun per cubic centimeter. An egg with 600,000, hundreds of thousands of times brighter than the sun. Conception is this unleashing of that bright flash of light from 600,000 mitochondria that will then quantum entangle with a piece of source, which we would call a soul. And so you quantum entangled in there. And now I'm telling you that we are at the first basket of the new humanity. And so you need to start to discharge light brighter than it's ever discharged if you're going to quantum entangle with your future self that stays to play. To do that, I gave you 2 experiences in the last couple of days that I hope you just make a ritual in your life. The first was the 4-minute workout. It seems so damn simple and silly, except that it completely invigorates the mitochondrial base in your body. You start proliferating mitochondria within seconds of starting the 4-minute workout, and over the next hour and a half, you go through a magnificent rebirth of the garden. And so you can up level by 4 or 5% your entire mitochondrial base if you will just do that a couple times a day. You will literally burn brighter. You will ignite more light to do the new conception of the first basket. We are now in the first basket. We are in this decade, 2017 to 2027. This is the first basket of the new humanity. And so the second piece that we did was breath work. Breath work supercharges the mitochondrial base, and you get massive discharges of light energy during breath work. And so if nothing else, if you do a 4-minute workout a couple times a day, and we'll agree to breathe huge 20 breaths in the morning, that usually when you start to feel it, you're like, I'm doing 20 big ones now. Get warmed up and do 20 bigger ones. You go to 50 and you really start to supercharge your body. So could you do some breath work for a few seconds a day? And could you do a 4-minute workout twice a day? Could you give yourself 10 minutes to set the first basket in place for your rebirth? It's a commitment that you can make, and then constantly forgive yourself for how many times you don't do it. But I gave you those two simple things, and I wanted you to feel them in your own body so that they're imprinted there. You can, if you forgot the 4-minute workout already, no problem. You can just Google it. It's on YouTube or something. But Zach Bush 4-minute workout, it'll pop right up, and it explains for about 15 minutes. And that's why it's a Zach Bush 4-minute workout, because it takes 15 minutes for me to tell you how it works. But I'll tell you why you do it. But it does get to like the exercises themselves and how you go there. So it's the first conception this decade, and this was also prophesied by many indigenous cultures and everything else. They saw this decade coming for a long time. They saw the end of the Mayan calendar for 1,000 years. They know that this is our metamorphic rebirth process. And so in the same way that Mother Earth holds her breath for 700,000 years, haven't humans been readied and being readied for this death rebirth cycle? We are ready, and you're here, and you're in the south of France because you have this inkling inside of you that there's something there for me. And if the answer is you, that it was not Mary Magdalene you were looking for, it is she inside of you. You are the woman you were looking for. You are the Magdalene you were looking for. She is not here in the south of France. She's inside of you, and it is called woman, and it is a phenomenal reality. The path of the rose is right damn straight into you. There is nothing greater than you. There's no being that came along that was better than you. There's no woman you need to measure up to. There's no Magdalene that needs to be connected with. You are her. And that's been her message, Yeshua's message. Everybody was saying the same fucking thing, is it's in here. And this is the Holy Grail. Can I hear an amen from the choir? 4-minute workout, some breath work, light it up. This is the decade that we're in, 2017, 2027. And that prophecy that was put into this decade around that Pleiadian prophecy, it said that in this decade, humans will lose the genes of fear, guilt, and shame. Can Can you imagine what that would feel like for our children if they lived in a humanity where there was no fear, guilt, or shame? Can we want that for our grandchildren? Holy smokes. Wait a second, what did we just do this decade? We created the biggest fear paradigm in history in 2020 and put that out in 8 billion, and anybody who stepped forward, we, for the first time, genetically modified humans directly. And then if they didn't step forward, we created a huge guilt thing. You're probably gonna kill your grandmother, and your grandmother's gonna die if you don't get this. And so anybody who stepped forward in guilt got genetically modified. And if that didn't work, then we shame them. If you don't get this thing, then you're as stupid as Donald Trump. You know, you're a vaccine denier, you're this or that, and so we'll shame you. And then whoever stepped forward, we genetically modified. Did we just genetically modify all humans who stepped forward with fear, guilt, and shame? Holy shit. People have never died faster than they have in the last 3 years. Younger ages, more turbo cancers than we've ever seen. People going from, like Shane, dying this week. He was fine a week ago, dies of metastatic cancer a week later. Like, these are things that I never saw in my cancer clinics. What is happening on the planet? Are we cleansing the fear, guilt, and shame? Does Shane and everybody else agree, I will eliminate that shit. I will get rid of the sludge by embodying it fully. I will embody it all. And the guilt of my addictions and my guilt of everything, I will embody it all as a soul. And just like Dr. Fauci's soul, I am willing to take the dirt and the sludge. So enjoy this last 2 years of traveling the world, being curious for consciousness, and start to embody it so that in 28 you are ready to build the new world. This is when we build where we will stay. This is when we rebuild our cities to be gardens. This is when the gardens become our keystone, our signature as a species. Everywhere a human goes, there's more beauty, more food, more abundance. This will be our 2028 forward. And so we have to go finish the death cycle and have no judgment on it. Death of topsoils, death of water, death of everything. Stop judging and be like, wow, Mother Earth is calling this shit in. She will take this wound and she will take it deeper because she already knows her plan and she's already doing it. There's lakes and there's big ass ocean under there, and everything is gonna happen, and the trees are gonna do their thing, and it's gonna be freaking spectacular. And if I die in the next 2 years, definitely gonna be an oak. Definitely coming back, one of those trees that gets to breathe more carbon than's ever breathed on this surface. I want to taste that breath or feel what that feels like. Damn, I already feel electricity in my body thinking about that. It's gonna be good, you know. Thank you for the baskets. Thank you for.
Thank you to the second basket, and it's really where we're surrounded by water, and the water has all the coding, and the water has all the memory. And what you said about the light and forgiveness in the darkness. And if we look at it, you know, it's dark in the womb. It's darker in the vaginal canal. Mm-hmm. And then in Spanish, to give birth, you say dar a luz, which really translated means to give to the light. Mm-hmm. So if we are going to go into the second basket and we're going to be surrounded by water and we're going to be really letting go of the stories that no longer help us to move forward, and we're going to go through this dark portal at some point, and we're going to really feel that pressure, and we're going to, as we go through that darkness, remember forgiveness is the gateway to actually letting go of the stories. And then we'll come out to the light. Vamos a dar a luz. We'll come out into the light. So I'll just sing a birth song. It's actually from Copper Woman, and you know, you can close your eyes, you can, whatever it is that you feel best with. And for the moms, really feel this one in case you never heard it and nobody sang it to you. And for all the ones that are here that didn't have children to give birth, feel it too in case it wasn't sung while you were in the womb as well. So it's really for everybody, including our dear men here. Thank you for being here, by the way, the three of you. So it's by Copper Woman. So I'll just have Alyssa just keep the heartbeat. Is that fair? Because you might want to feel the song too. Yeah? Okay, and just remember that heartbeat is really...
Actually, I'll do the heartbeat. I want you to feel this. Are you game for that? I want you to feel, I want her to sing to you.
And if you're ever scared of singing, by the way, most women, we feel like we are because we have to sound a certain way. I'm not a singer. That's something you can't sing. Because when you sing, we're not performing, we're really praying in a different way. So make sure you sing when you can and you want to. It doesn't have to sound like anything other than you. I have to clear my throat. Okay, here we go. In the womb, I feel the safety of my mother. In the womb, I feel connected and safe. In the womb, I feel the safety of my mother. In the womb, I feel connected and safe. In the womb, I feel the safety of my mother. In the womb, I feel connected and safe. I'm gonna change the verse. In the womb, I feel the safety of my mother. And I feel her compassion and love, sweet love. And when I feel afraid, and when I feel unsure, I return to the heartbeat, I return to the womb. Sacred waters of the womb surround me with comfort. And when I go within, I let the pain flow out. Sacred waters of the womb surround me with comfort. I walk this earth a little lighter now. I walk my life a little brighter now.
Just bring attention to your toroidal field. And the spinning from left to right as you look out at the field. A blur from your left to right. Speed it up. Speed it up. From blur to white light. A field of light looking in upon you, being witness to everything that happens within this environment that is you.